For 8 years, I lived thinking my entire family had cut me off, because that's what my parents told me. Then my teenage niece called me in tears with an audio recording that shattered the lie and exposed the heartbreaking truth they kept from me. Imagine being told, at just 7 years old, that wanting your own life, your own dreams, made you a bad person. That's how it started for me. A quiet kind of psychological kidnapping that slowly, insidiously, choked the very idea of independence out of me. It wasn't until a shocking betrayal forced me to choose myself that I stumbled upon a gut-wrenching truth that changed everything I thought I knew about my family. My mom might as well have put me in chains. She looked me in the eyes, this innocent little 7-year-old me, and said, "Honey, people who move away from their family are bad people. If you ever even think about doing that, mommy and daddy will punish you." Can you even imagine? At that age, I was dreaming of golden mansions and flying cars, and suddenly, just thinking about those dreams made me feel this crushing weight of guilt. But I revered my parents, you know? They were like gods to me, like the president and queen all rolled into one. So I swallowed it. I promised myself I'd never, ever leave. Never move out. But when I hit 20, something had to give. Every single night, I'd wake up to the god-awful screaming of my 2 baby nephews. I swear, it sounded like hyenas caught in a fence. It was unbearable. So, for the first time since that stupid day I was 7, I tentatively, nervously, told my mom I was thinking about moving out. I had a whole plan, all in my head. I'd live with a friend. I'd pay for everything. I was so sure this logical approach would work. Her reaction? Oh man. The way she screamed. It was like I'd just told her I blew up the Special Olympics. How dare you? I'm not even going to entertain this. Don't even think about asking your father. See, to my parents, moving out isn't just a life choice. It's the ultimate betrayal. It means you're ungrateful, a horrible child. It means you're basically a monster. So, I figured, logically, if I could just prove my unwavering loyalty, truly demonstrate my gratitude, then everything would be fine, right? So, I started working an extra 20 hours a week. Every single paycheck, half of it went straight to them. Still not enough. Not convinced. So, I started doing all the grocery shopping, all the cooking, all the cleaning. Everything. Still not convinced. I even took time off college and off my job, just to help take care of the 7 kids living in that house. 7. And guess what? They still weren't convinced of my gratitude. My loyalty. They never even said thank you. Not once. By the time I was 23 and finally graduating college, I was done. I was the one who had had enough. Because not only did they not show up to my graduation, not only did they not bother to celebrate this massive achievement I'd fought so hard for, but as soon as I got home, the very first thing they did was make fun of me. Yeah. You see, their unconventional morals stretched way beyond just don't move out. It was any achievement, any step forward you took on your own. Even getting them to let me finish high school was a battle. So, when they started calling me an office rat or Mr. Fancy Degree, something just snapped inside me. That night, I spent hours on the phone, practically begging my buddies if they were looking for a roommate. Thankfully, one of them was, and I wasted no time telling my mom. She didn't say anything, just crossed her arms. And she walked away. That was it. I moved out that very same day, and I never heard from my family again. And you know what? I didn't reach out either. Not at first. I wanted to make sure I had a stable life, you know? A real foundation. It wasn't until a few months ago, when I turned 31, that I finally considered reaching out. Because in those years, I'd built that stable life. I had an incredibly beautiful and amazing fiancée, Ella, a nice car, a very solid career, which meant I had enough money to do something truly big. Not only could I pay off my parents' mortgage, but I could also contribute to a new house for them and all the kids. As I wrote out that $200,000 check, I felt this overwhelming sense of pride. I was finally able to give back, to show them how much I loved them. And that's when I did something incredibly crazy, reckless. I invited my entire family over for dinner. It was just an email. The first time we had spoken in 8 years. My mom replied almost instantly, said they'd all be attending. My heart actually jumped. I really, truly thought this was going to be the moment. The moment our relationship was rebuilt. In the days leading up to it, I did everything I could to make sure it was perfect. I planned on cooking 3 homemade recipes. I even set up a little play area for the little ones. I tried not to get my hopes too high, but as I set everything up, I couldn't stop fantasizing about what they might say. We loved you all along. We missed you so much. Oh, how I longed to hear those words. So, when the moment finally came, and they were at my doorstep, me and my fiancée Ella, we happily welcomed them inside. My 2 nephews came, along with my 4 nieces, 3 aunts, an uncle, and of course my parents. Aside from some awkward small talk, the house was pretty much silent for a while. The tension was suffocating. I felt so unbelievably awkward that I just broke the silence. I took out that fat check, the one for $200,000, and handed it to them. This is for your mortgage and some extra to help you in the future. Oh wow. My mom was the first to speak. Her voice was dripping with venom. So, you think you can just abandon your family and come back with some money like nothing ever happened? I felt that familiar pain again, you know? Like a wound I thought had healed, being brutally poked. I'm sorry, Mom. Sorry. This time, it was my dad who interrupted. His voice was laced with pure sarcasm. Oh, yeah, I'm the most ungrateful and worthless piece of crap, but hey, at least I'm sorry. He said it in this mocking tone, twisting every word. I swear, I was about to start crying right there. But then my mom chimed back in, somehow managing to change the topic and make it even worse. She pointed a finger straight at Ella. I hope you're not actually with this sorry excuse for a woman. I just stared at the check, still clutched in my mother's hand. The smell of the freshly cooked dinners, my homemade meals, hit my nostrils. Suddenly, all my sadness, all my guilt, every ounce of it, was replaced with a deep, unearthing, burning rage. I grabbed Ella's hand. I literally shoved the adults out of the way. And we walked out. We got in the car and drove around the corner, just needing to breathe. Ella wasn't upset, not in the way I was. In fact, she was just as angry as me. We didn't say much. But she knew. I was done with them. It had been building for years, this rage, this frustration. Today was just the breaking point. My reality check. I knew I couldn't ignore it anymore. I had to do something. Ella reached over and squeezed my hand as we sat in the car. Her touch helped ground me, but my hands were still shaking from what had just happened. 8 years of hoping. 8 years of imagining this moment going differently. And it had ended exactly like every other interaction with my parents. The dashboard clock showed 7:43 p.m. We'd been in that house for less than an hour, but it felt like a lifetime. I kept replaying my mother's words about Ella, my father's mocking tone. That check, the $200,000, was probably still in her hand. All that money I'd saved, I'd worked for, just to show them I'd made something of myself, all for that. Ella shifted in her seat and pointed down the street. There was a small diner on the corner, one of those 24-hour places with the flickering neon signs. She didn't have to say anything. I knew what she was thinking. Going home right now would just mean sitting in silence, letting the anger eat away at us. I pulled into the parking lot, and we walked inside. The place was nearly empty, just a trucker at the counter and an elderly couple in the back booth. We slid into a corner table, and the waitress brought us coffee without even asking. That's when everything hit me. All at once. My shoulders started shaking first. Then the tears came. 8 years of built-up hope, crashing down in a single evening. Ella moved to sit beside me, wrapping her arm around my shoulders while I broke down completely. The waitress pretended not to notice, busying herself with wiping down already clean tables. When I finally caught my breath, I looked at Ella through blurry eyes. She was crying too, but not for herself. For me. For what my family had put me through. She understood this pain better than anyone. She told me about her own family then, how she'd gone through something similar with her parents 5 years ago. The constant criticism, the manipulation, the way they made her feel worthless no matter what she achieved. She'd tried reconciling twice before, finally accepting that some relationships just can't be fixed. My phone started buzzing on the table, text after text flooding in. I turned it face down, but we could still hear the constant vibration against the formica. Ella picked it up and scrolled through the messages. Her face darkened with each one. They were from various family members, my aunts, my uncle, even numbers I didn't recognize. All demanding apologies. All saying I was ungrateful. Several mentioned wanting the check back. Apparently, my parents had already started their campaign, twisting the story to make me the villain who'd abandoned them and then tried to buy their forgiveness. The phone started ringing. I was about to decline the call when I saw the name on the screen. It was my youngest niece, the one who'd been 8 when I left. She'd be 16 now. Some gut feeling, made me answer. Her voice came through in whispers, and I could hear the echo of a bathroom fan in the background. She was crying, trying to keep quiet so no one would hear her. She kept apologizing, saying she was so sorry about what happened at dinner. Then she told me something that changed everything. She'd been so excited to finally see her uncle again that she'd secretly recorded the whole dinner on her phone. She wanted to remember the moment we were reunited. Instead, she'd captured the entire cruel exchange. She played parts of the audio for me over the phone. Hearing it again was like reliving the nightmare. But this time, I noticed things I'd missed in the moment. The way my other family members had stayed completely silent. The rehearsed quality of my parents' attacks. The speed with which they'd launched into their criticism, like they'd been planning it. My niece was sobbing now, saying she'd always missed me, that she never understood why the family talked about me like I was some kind of monster. She remembered me teaching her to tie her shoes, pushing her on the swings. She couldn't reconcile those warm memories with the cold, selfish person my parents described. After we hung up, I sat there, just staring at my phone. Ella suggested we shouldn't respond to any of the angry messages for at least 24 hours. Let everyone cool down first. Let my parents' version of events settle before we decided what to do next. We drove home in silence, but it was a different kind of quiet than before. My mind was racing with the implications of what my niece had revealed. If she felt this way, were there others in the family who'd been fed lies about me? Back at our house, I went to the closet and pulled out a box I hadn't opened in years. Old photo albums I'd hidden away because looking at them hurt too much. But now I needed perspective. I needed to remember if it had always been this toxic. The pictures told a different story. There I was at family barbecues, laughing with cousins. Birthday parties where everyone seemed genuinely happy. Holiday gatherings full of warmth. It hadn't always been about control and criticism. Something had shifted as I got older, as I started wanting independence. At the bottom of the box, I found an envelope I didn't remember saving. My grandmother's handwriting was on the front, my name spelled out in her careful script. Inside were several letters dated from 3 years ago, 3 years after I'd left. She died shortly after writing them. The letters broke my heart all over again. She wrote about how much she missed me, how she didn't understand why I'd disappeared. She defended me to the family, she said, but no one would tell her how to reach me. She tried sending letters to my old college, my old workplace, anywhere she could think of. In the last letter, she wrote about being sick, about hoping she'd see me one more time, about how proud she was of the man she knew I'd become, even if she couldn't witness it herself. She said she'd never believe the things my parents said about me. Ella found me there on the floor, surrounded by photos and letters. She sat down beside me and picked up some of the pictures. Then she noticed something else in the box, my old college essays. The ones where I'd written about my dreams and goals. She read through them, occasionally looking up at me with this expression of wonder. Everything I'd written about wanting to achieve, I'd done. The career, the stability, the ability to give back to others. I'd accomplished it all. Despite my parents' attempts to keep me small, we realized something then. My success might actually threaten the narrative my parents had built about me. If I was thriving without them, if I'd become successful despite their criticism, what did that say about their parenting? About their insistence that moving out meant failure? My phone buzzed with a different notification. A text from my brother, the father of the 16-year-old who'd called. He wanted to talk privately, away from our parents. Said there were things I needed to know. I stared at that message for a long time. My brother had been 13 when I left. Old enough to remember me, but young enough to still be under our parents' complete control. What could he possibly want to say now? We spent the rest of the night going through them, piecing together memories I'd buried. Ella pointed out patterns I hadn't seen before. How in every photo with extended family, I looked happy. How it was only in pictures with just my parents that my smile seemed forced. The next morning, I called my brother back. His voice sounded different than I remembered. Older, obviously, but also tired. He asked if we could meet somewhere neutral, somewhere our parents wouldn't know about. The secrecy in his tone made me nervous, but I agreed. When we met at a small cafe downtown, I barely recognized him. The scared 13-year-old had grown into a man who looked worn down by life. He sat across from me, fidgeting with his coffee cup, struggling to find words. Finally, he told me the truth. He'd been caught between our parents and me for 8 years. They'd made him choose sides, and he'd been too afraid to stand up to them. But there was more. Our parents had been intercepting things I'd sent over the years. Birthday cards, Christmas gifts, letters trying to maintain some connection with my nieces and nephews. All of it had been hidden away or thrown out. The family had been told I'd cut them off completely, that I wanted nothing to do with any of them. My brother pulled out his phone and showed me screenshots of messages in the family group chat. Years of my parents poisoning the well, telling everyone I was selfish, ungrateful, that I'd abandoned them for money and success. They painted a picture of me as someone who thought he was too good for his family. But the worst part was learning that the no contact hadn't been as mutual as I'd thought. While I'd been respecting their silence, assuming they wanted nothing to do with me, they'd been actively preventing any communication from reaching me. They'd created the very estrangement they now blamed me for. My brother admitted he'd tried reaching out a few times over the years, but our parents always found out. The guilt and conflict had been eating at him, especially as his daughter grew older and started asking questions about the uncle in old photos who never came around anymore. As we sat there in that cafe, the full weight of 8 lost years settled on my shoulders. Not just the time I'd missed with my siblings and their children, but the relationships that had been deliberately sabotaged. The connections that had been severed, not by mutual choice, but by manipulation and lies. Ella had been right about waiting 24 hours before responding to those angry texts. because now I had a completely different perspective on what had really happened. The question was, what was I going to do about it? My brother and I sat in that cafe for 3 hours. He showed me more evidence of our parents' deception. Photos from family events where they told everyone I'd been invited but chose not to come. Messages where they'd claimed I'd rejected their attempts at reconciliation. The systematic way they'd rewritten history made my stomach turn. Ella texted asking if I was okay. I sent her a quick update, and she suggested bringing my brother back to our house to continue the conversation somewhere more private. He hesitated at first, worried about our parents finding out, but eventually agreed. Back at our place, my brother broke down. The weight of keeping these secrets for years had clearly taken its toll. He explained how our parents had monitored his phone, his social media, even his mail to ensure he couldn't contact me. They'd threatened to cut him off financially if he tried to reach out. He pulled out a small box from his bag. Inside were birthday cards I'd sent his kids over the years, all unopened. He'd managed to intercept them before our parents could throw them away, hiding them in his garage. Each envelope had my handwriting. My return address carefully written in the corner. My hands shook as I saw the dates. Every single birthday. Every Christmas. I'd sent something. The early ones had hopeful messages about seeing them soon. The later ones just said I was thinking of them, that I loved them. My brother revealed that our parents had told the kids I'd abandoned them because I didn't care about family. They painted me as someone who valued money over relationships. Meanwhile, they'd been destroying evidence that proved the opposite. He showed me a video on his phone. It was from his daughter's 13th birthday party 3 years ago. In it, she was blowing out candles on her cake, and someone asked her to make a wish. Her response was barely audible, but I heard it clearly. She'd wished her uncle would come back. That broke something inside me. All those years of respecting what I thought was mutual distance, and these kids had been wishing for me to return. They'd been told lies about why I wasn't there, made to believe I'd chosen to abandon them. My brother admitted he'd started questioning our parents' narrative when his daughter found old photos of me online. She'd asked why I looked so happy in pictures with her as a baby. If I supposedly hated family, he couldn't give her a good answer. Ella suggested we reach out to other family members individually, away from our parents' influence. She'd been taking notes during our conversation, creating a timeline of the deception. Her analytical mind was already forming a plan. We started with my aunt, my mother's sister. I'd always been close to her growing up. My brother gave me her number, warning that she might not be receptive. Our parents had spent years turning her against me. I made the call with shaking hands. When she answered, I could barely get words out. There was silence on the other end. Then I heard her start crying. She kept repeating my name, asking if it was really me. She'd been told I'd changed my number, that I'd blocked the entire family. She'd tried to find me on social media, but couldn't. Our parents had convinced her that I wanted nothing to do with any of them, that reaching out would only upset me. We arranged to meet the next day at a coffee shop across town. She insisted on somewhere our parents wouldn't accidentally see us. The fear in her voice told me everything about how they'd been controlling the family narrative. That night, Ella and I strategized. We created a spreadsheet of family members, noting who might be receptive to the truth and who was likely too deep in my parents' influence. It felt like planning a careful campaign to reclaim my stolen relationships. My phone rang around midnight. It was my cousin, someone I'd been close to as kids. Word had already started spreading that I'd contacted my aunt. She wanted to know if it was true, if I was really back in touch. She revealed that several family members had always questioned the story about me. The sudden, complete cutoff hadn't made sense to them, but whenever anyone brought it up, our parents would become enraged, accusing them of disloyalty. The next morning, I met my aunt at the coffee shop. She looked older, grayer, but her eyes were the same warm brown I remembered. She hugged me so tight, I could barely breathe, both of us crying in the middle of the busy cafe. She'd brought photo albums, showing me all the family events I'd missed, graduations, weddings, new babies. In every group photo, she pointed out the space where I should have been. She'd saved a place for me, hoping I'd eventually return. My aunt revealed that my grandmother had never believed I'd abandoned the family. Even on her deathbed, she'd insisted something wasn't right. She'd made my aunt promise to find me someday, to learn the truth. My aunt had tried, but hit dead ends everywhere. She showed me a letter my grandmother had written to me before she died. My parents had claimed they'd sent it to me, and I'd returned it unopened. Another lie. The letter was beautiful, full of love and understanding. My grandmother had suspected my parents were behind the estrangement. My aunt admitted she'd seen my parents' controlling behavior escalate over the years. They'd driven away other family members who questioned their authority. I wasn't the first to be exiled, just the most complete cutoff. We spent hours catching up. She told me about my cousins' lives, their careers, their children, all the milestones I'd missed. She showed me recent photos, pointing out how much the kids looked like me at that age. When I told her about the dinner disaster, she wasn't surprised. She'd noticed my parents had been extra aggressive lately, probably because they sensed their control slipping. My success threatened their narrative that leaving family meant failure. My aunt offered to help coordinate meetings with other family members. She knew who was ready to hear the truth and who might need more time. Some had been so thoroughly convinced by my parents that it would take careful work to break through. Over the following days, I met with more relatives. Each meeting revealed new layers of deception. My uncle had been told I'd laughed when informed about my grandmother's illness. Another aunt heard I'd refused to help when the family faced financial troubles. Every lie was designed to paint me as heartless and selfish. Meanwhile, I'd been sending cards, gifts, and even money over the years, all intercepted and hidden. The scope of the manipulation was staggering. My cousin arranged a group meeting at her house. 6 family members came, all eager to hear my side. I brought the evidence my brother had shared, the cards, the timeline Ella had created. Watching their faces change from skepticism to horror was painful. They started sharing their own experiences with my parents' control. Stories of manipulation, of being pitted against each other, of love being conditional on complete obedience. Patterns emerged that we'd all experienced but never connected. One cousin revealed she'd been threatened with exile when she'd defended me years ago. She'd backed down, afraid of losing access to her elderly grandparents. The guilt had eaten at her ever since. My uncle admitted he'd always been proud of my success, but had been forbidden from expressing it. He'd followed my career online, celebrating my achievements in private while publicly agreeing with my parents' criticism. The group decided to confront my parents together, but Ella suggested a different approach. Mass confrontation would only make them defensive. Instead, we needed to be strategic, to slowly dismantle their control over the family narrative. We created a private group chat, excluding my parents and their most loyal supporters. Family members started sharing memories and photos from before the estrangement. It was like rebuilding our relationships from scratch. My teenage niece, the one who'd recorded the dinner, became our most valuable ally. She shared what life was like in my parents' house now. The constant criticism, the manipulation, the way love was weaponized to maintain control. She revealed that my parents had been intercepting her attempts to find me on social media. They'd monitored her phone, deleted messages, blocked accounts. She'd had to become sneaky just to maintain contact with me. Other young family members started speaking up. They'd all been told stories about me, but social media had made them suspicious. They'd found my professional profiles, seen my success, wondered why someone so accomplished would abandon family. My brother organized a gathering at a local park, just the cousins and their kids. No parents' generation invited. It was the first time in 8 years I'd been surrounded by family without fear or judgment. The kids were hesitant at first. They'd been told so many lies about me, but gradually they warmed up. My nephew, now 10, asked if it was true that I'd never forgotten his birthday. When I listed every single one, he started crying. I'd brought gifts for all of them. Nothing expensive, just thoughtful things based on what my brother had told me about their interests. Seeing their faces light up was worth every painful moment of the past weeks. My sister-in-law pulled me aside during the gathering. She'd always suspected something was wrong with my parents' story. She'd seen how they treated my brother, the constant control and criticism. She was glad the truth was finally coming out. The family group chat became more active. People started sharing their own stories of my parents' manipulation. Patterns emerged that went back decades. They'd always used love as a weapon, making it conditional on complete submission. My aunt revealed that my parents had tried to control her wedding 30 years ago. When she pushed back, they'd threatened to boycott. She'd given in on most things just to keep peace. The pattern was clear. More family members reached out privately. Each had a story of control, manipulation, or punishment for perceived disloyalty. My estrangement had been the most extreme example, but everyone had experienced their tactics. My parents started noticing the shift in family dynamics. They called various relatives, trying to reassert control, but people weren't responding the way they used to. The foundation of their power was cracking. They attempted to organize a family meeting at their house, demanding everyone attend. Half the family declined. This had never happened before. Their confusion and rage were reported back through the group chat. My mother called my aunt, screaming about betrayal and disloyalty. She accused her of poisoning the family against them. My aunt calmly told her that the truth had a way of coming out eventually. My father tried a different approach with my uncle, playing the victim. He claimed I was turning the family against them, that I was trying to destroy everything they'd built. My uncle didn't buy it anymore. The younger generation was the most resistant to their manipulation. They'd grown up with different values, less tolerance for conditional love. They started pushing back openly, refusing to participate in the toxic dynamics. My niece began recording more interactions with my parents, not maliciously, but as protection. She'd learned that their version of events couldn't be trusted. The recordings revealed daily emotional manipulation. My brother found more evidence in their house. Boxes of cards and letters I'd sent over the years, all hidden in the attic. Photos they'd claimed were lost. Proof of their systematic campaign to erase me from family history. He confronted them privately about what he'd found. They tried to justify it, claiming they were protecting the family from my toxic influence. When he asked what was toxic about birthday cards to children, they had no answer. The family started planning holiday gatherings without my parents for the first time ever. This was unprecedented. They'd always been the center of every family event, controlling guest lists and dynamics. My cousin hosted Thanksgiving at her house. She invited everyone except my parents and their few remaining allies. It was the first family holiday I'd attended in 8 years. The absence of criticism and control was striking. During dinner, family members shared what they were thankful for. Many mentioned the truth coming out, relationships being rebuilt, the end of fear-based family dynamics. It was emotional, but healing. My parents heard about the gathering and went nuclear. They sent a group email to the entire extended family, full of accusations and manipulation. They painted themselves as victims of an ungrateful son's campaign against them. The email backfired spectacularly. Family members who'd been neutral saw the manipulation tactics in writing. The language was so toxic, so controlling, that it proved everything I'd been saying about them. My aunt organized a response. She gathered statements from family members about their experiences with my parents' control. The document was devastating in its consistency. Everyone had similar stories, spanning decades. We decided to give my parents one chance to acknowledge their behavior and seek help. A small group of us met with them at a neutral location. They needed to understand that their control over the family was over. The meeting was a disaster. They refused to acknowledge any wrongdoing. Every piece of evidence was met with justification or outright denial. They accused us of conspiring against them, of being ungrateful and disloyal. When confronted with the boxes of hidden letters, they claimed they were protecting the family. When asked about the lies they'd spread, they insisted they were true. The level of delusion was stunning. My mother tried emotional manipulation, crying about how much she'd sacrificed for the family. My father raged about disrespect and betrayal. Neither would even consider that their behavior had been harmful. The family made a collective decision. Until my parents acknowledged their behavior and sought therapy, they would be excluded from family gatherings. It was a complete reversal of the power dynamic they'd maintained for decades. Some family members struggled with this decision. The programming ran deep, but the younger generation stood firm, refusing to subject their children to the same toxic dynamics they'd experienced. My parents tried individual manipulation, calling family members separately to divide and conquer. But we'd learned to communicate openly. Every manipulation attempt was shared in the group chat and collectively resisted. They showed up uninvited to family events, expecting their presence to be accepted as always. Instead, they were asked to leave. The shock on their faces showed they'd never imagined losing their position of power. As the months passed, the family grew closer without their toxic influence. Relationships flourished without constant criticism and control. Children were more relaxed at gatherings. The difference was remarkable. My relationship with my brother deepened. We met weekly, rebuilding the bond that had been severed. He apologized repeatedly for not standing up to them sooner. I understood the fear that had kept him silent. My nieces and nephews started spending weekends at our house. Ella loved being the cool aunt, taking them on adventures their grandparents would never have approved of. Simple things like choosing their own clothes or hairstyles. The family started new traditions, rotating hosting duties for holidays, democratic decision-making for events, and most importantly, unconditional love and support. Everything my parents had withheld or weaponized. My work suffered during this period as I navigated the emotional turmoil. But my boss was understanding when I explained the situation. She'd experienced similar family dynamics and offered flexibility and support. Ella was my rock throughout everything. She attended family gatherings, helped coordinate meetings, and provided perspective when emotions ran high. Her own experience with family estrangement made her uniquely equipped to help. We started planning our wedding with full family involvement. Everyone except my parents received invitations. It felt strange, but necessary. Their presence would have poisoned what should be a joyful celebration. My parents made one last desperate attempt at control. They contacted the wedding venue, trying to cancel our reservation. They called vendors, spreading lies about us. Fortunately, we'd anticipated this and had safeguards in place. The family rallied around us, helping with wedding planning and protecting us from further sabotage. My aunt stepped into the mother of the groom role. My uncle offered to walk me down the aisle. The support was overwhelming. As our wedding approached, I reflected on the journey. 8 years of unnecessary estrangement based on lies and manipulation, but also the discovery of how many family members had been suffering under the same control. The truth had set us all free, but the cost was high. Relationships that should have been continuous were broken and rebuilt. Children had grown up without connections that should have been constant, time we couldn't get back. But we were building something new and healthier. A family based on genuine love and respect, not control and conditional acceptance. It wasn't perfect, but it was real and honest in a way it had never been before. I stared at the wedding invitation drafts spread across our dining table. 6 months had passed since that disastrous dinner, and the family dynamics had shifted completely. My parents were now the ones on the outside, desperately trying to claw their way back to relevance. The doorbell rang unexpectedly. Through the peephole, I saw my mother standing alone, looking smaller than I remembered. She clutched a manila envelope against her chest. I hesitated before opening the door. She thrust the envelope at me without preamble. Inside were dozens of photos I'd never seen. Pictures of her holding the birthday cards I'd sent, sitting in her bedroom. Timestamps showed they were taken years ago. She'd kept them hidden from my father. My mother's hands trembled as she pulled out more items. A USB drive containing videos she'd secretly recorded of family gatherings where I was mentioned. In each one, she defended me quietly before my father shut her down. The evidence painted a different picture than what I believed. She explained how my father had controlled the narrative, threatening her with divorce if she contacted me. She'd been trapped between losing her marriage or losing her son. The manila envelope represented years of hidden rebellion, small acts of defiance I'd never known about. I brought her inside where Ella was working on wedding centerpieces. My mother's eyes widened at the sight of our life together. She touched the fabric samples gently, tears streaming down her face. This was the first time she'd seen evidence of the life I'd built. Over the next hour, she revealed more truths. My father had been monitoring her phone, her emails, even following her when she left the house. She tried to send me messages through various channels, but he'd always discovered them. The level of surveillance was disturbing. She showed me a notebook where she'd written letters to me every week for 8 years. Hundreds of pages filled with updates about the family, apologies, and expressions of love. She'd hidden it in her sewing kit, the one place my father never looked. My phone buzzed with messages from the family group chat. Word had already spread that my mother was at my house. Some family members were suspicious, wondering if this was another manipulation tactic. Others hoped it signaled real change. Ella suggested we meet somewhere more neutral to continue talking. We drove to the same diner where everything had started 6 months ago. My mother looked around nervously, as if my father might appear at any moment. She pulled out her phone and showed me her recent call history. Dozens of calls to therapists, all made from payphones because my father monitored their cell phone bill. She'd been trying to get help, but couldn't do it openly without risking his rage. My mother admitted she'd been slowly moving money into a separate account. Small amounts that wouldn't be noticed. She was planning to leave my father, but needed to ensure she could support herself first. The fear in her eyes was genuine. She revealed that my father's control had escalated since the family had turned against them. He'd become paranoid, convinced everyone was plotting against him. He'd installed cameras in their house, monitored her every movement. She was essentially a prisoner. I watched her hands shake as she described the past 6 months. The isolation, the constant accusations, the way he blamed her for losing the family's loyalty. She'd been bearing the brunt of his rage while secretly planning her escape. My brother arrived at the diner, having tracked us through the family group chat. He was skeptical at first, but my mother showed him the evidence she'd brought. His expression shifted from suspicion to concern as he realized the extent of her situation. She explained that she'd been the one to secretly tell my grandmother how to reach me years ago. She'd risked everything to give my grandmother my work address, but my father had intercepted the letters before they could be sent. The guilt had been eating at her. My mother pulled out a small key and slid it across the table. It was for a safety deposit box where she'd been storing evidence of my father's behavior. Financial records showing money diverted from my college fund. Recordings of his threats. Proof of his lies to the family. She'd been building a case for years, knowing that one day she might need protection. The safety deposit box also contained copies of all the cards and letters I'd sent, which she'd photographed before my father destroyed them. She'd been preserving evidence of my love for the family. My brother and I exchanged glances. This changed everything we thought we knew. Our mother hadn't been a willing participant in the estrangement, but another victim of my father's control. The family narrative needed another revision. She asked about the wedding planning, her voice small and hopeful. When I showed her photos on my phone, she traced the images with her finger. She asked if there was any way she could attend, even if she had to sit in the back, even if she couldn't participate. Ella had been quiet throughout the conversation, but now she spoke up. She suggested my mother needed to take concrete steps before any reconciliation could happen, leaving my father, getting therapy, making amends to the family members she'd hurt while under his control. My mother nodded eagerly, pulling out a folded paper. It was a lease agreement for a small apartment across town. She'd already put down a deposit using the money she'd been saving. She was planning to leave my father next week. She'd also been in contact with a divorce attorney, meeting in secret at the library. The attorney had helped her understand her rights and what she could expect from the proceedings. She'd been preparing for months, waiting for the right moment. My mother revealed that several other family members had reached out to her privately, offering support if she left my father. My aunt had even offered her a place to stay. The family was ready to embrace her once she broke free from his control. We spent 3 hours in that diner going through everything. By the end, my brother and I had a completely different understanding of our childhood. Many moments that had seemed like joint parental criticism were actually my father's words, with my mother silently suffering alongside us. She left with a promise to follow through on her plans. As she walked to her car, I noticed how she kept checking over her shoulder. The fear was real. My father had trained her well over the decades. That night, Ella and I discussed everything with the family group chat. Opinions were divided. Some believed my mother deserved a second chance. Others thought it might be an elaborate manipulation. Everyone agreed she needed to leave my father first. 3 days later, my aunt called with news. My mother had shown up at her door with 2 suitcases and a bruised wrist. She'd finally told my father she was leaving. His reaction had been violent, but she'd managed to escape while he was at work. The family rallied immediately. My uncle and brother went to retrieve the rest of her belongings while my father was out. My cousins helped her set up her new apartment. Everyone contributed something, from furniture to emotional support. My father's response was predictable. He called every family member, raging about betrayal and conspiracy. He threatened legal action, promised to destroy anyone who helped my mother. His threats fell on deaf ears. His power over the family was finally broken. My mother started therapy immediately, attending sessions twice a week. She joined a support group for emotional abuse survivors. The transformation was gradual but noticeable. Years of suppressed personality began emerging. She shared stories in therapy that she later relayed to us. The slow escalation of control, the way my father had isolated her from her own family, the threats that kept her compliant. It was textbook abusive behavior that had been hidden behind closed doors. The divorce proceedings were ugly. My father tried every tactic to maintain control. He hid assets, made false accusations, attempted to turn the legal system against her. But my mother had been preparing. Her evidence was thorough and damning. During this time, she slowly rebuilt relationships with family members. She attended small gatherings, always careful not to overstep. She apologized individually to everyone she'd hurt while under my father's influence. The sincerity was evident. My teenage niece became particularly close to her. They bonded over their shared experience of my father's control. My mother helped her understand that the criticism and manipulation weren't normal, that families could function with love and respect. As our wedding approached, the question of my mother's attendance became pressing. The family was divided. Some felt she'd earned her place back. Others worried about my father showing up if he learned she was invited. Ella and I decided to meet with my mother privately to discuss it. She arrived with a gift, a photo album she'd been secretly maintaining of my achievements over the years, newspaper clippings, printouts from my company's website, photos she'd found online. She'd been following my life from afar. She didn't push for an invitation. Instead, she said she understood if we weren't ready. She'd spent years enabling my father's behavior, even if unwillingly. She knew trust would take time to rebuild. Her acceptance of responsibility was genuine. We decided to include her in some pre-wedding events. The rehearsal dinner, the morning preparations, small steps toward integration. She cried when we told her, promising not to make the events about her reconciliation. My father escalated his harassment. As the wedding approached, he sent letters to our employers trying to get us fired. He filed false police reports. He even hired a private investigator to follow us. Each action only reinforced our decision to exclude him. The family's response was unified. Everyone blocked his calls, refused his letters, and documented his harassment. Several family members filed restraining orders. The man who had controlled us through fear was now facing consequences for his actions. My mother thrived in her new independence. She got a part-time job, something my father had forbidden for decades. She reconnected with old friends he'd driven away. She even started taking art classes, rediscovering passions she'd abandoned. 2 weeks before the wedding, she called with urgent news. My father had been arrested for violating multiple restraining orders. He'd been caught trying to break into my aunt's house. His desperation had finally led to legal consequences. The arrest changed things. With my father temporarily incarcerated, Some family members felt safer about my mother's full participation in the wedding. The threat of his disruption was minimized. We decided to give her a more prominent role. She helped with last-minute preparations, working alongside Ella's family. The integration was smooth. She was respectful of boundaries, helpful without being overbearing. It was like glimpsing the person she might have been without my father's influence. The morning of the wedding, she arrived early to help with setup. She brought a gift, a quilt she'd been secretly making for years with fabric from my childhood clothes. She'd hidden it from my father, working on it only when he was gone. It was beautiful. During the ceremony, she sat in the second row, tears streaming down her face. When I looked at her, I saw a genuine joy mixed with regret for the years lost. But more importantly, I saw hope for the future relationship we might build. The reception was everything we dreamed of. Family members who'd been estranged for years danced together. Children played freely without fear of criticism. Love flowed without conditions or manipulation. It was the family we'd always deserved. My mother gave a brief toast, acknowledging the pain of the past, while celebrating the healing present. She thanked the family for giving her a second chance and promised to earn their trust every day. There wasn't a dry eye in the room. As the night wound down, I found her sitting quietly at a table, watching the families interact. She smiled when I approached, and we sat in comfortable silence. No words were needed. We both understood this was just the beginning of our new relationship. The next morning, Ella and I left for our honeymoon. At the airport, I received a text from my mother. Just 3 words. I love you. No manipulation. No guilt. No demands. Just simple, unconditional love. It had taken decades, but she was finally free to express it. When we returned 2 weeks later, the family dynamics had settled into a new rhythm. My mother was integrated but respectful of boundaries. My father was facing criminal charges. The toxic control that had defined our family for so long was finally broken. I started meeting my mother for coffee once a week. We talked about everything and nothing. She shared stories from my childhood I'd forgotten. I told her about my life during the estranged years. Slowly, carefully, we built something new. She showed me the journal she'd started in therapy. Pages of processing trauma, recognizing patterns, taking accountability. She was doing the hard work of healing, not just for the family, but for herself. 6 months after the wedding, my father was sentenced to probation and mandatory anger management. He was prohibited from contacting any family members. The legal system had accomplished what we couldn't, forcing him to face consequences. My mother's divorce was finalized around the same time. She was awarded a fair settlement despite my father's attempts to hide assets. She used some of the money to pay back family members who'd helped her escape. The gesture was appreciated, but unnecessary. She moved into a nicer apartment and started building her own life. She joined clubs, made friends, traveled to places my father had forbidden. Every update she shared showed a woman discovering herself after decades of suppression. The family holidays that followed were peaceful. My mother participated fully, but never tried to reclaim her former position of authority. She was content to be included, to be part of the healing family we'd all worked to create. My brother and I developed a closer relationship with her than we'd ever had before. Without my father's influence, she was funny, creative, and supportive. We mourned the years lost, but focused on building new memories. A year after the wedding, she called with news. My father had reached out through his lawyer, wanting to attempt reconciliation. He'd completed therapy and wanted to apologize. She was asking for our thoughts, not telling us what to do. The family discussed it extensively. Some felt he deserved a chance to make amends. Others believed he'd simply learned to mimic what therapists wanted to hear. We decided each person could make their own choice about contact. I chose not to respond. The damage was too deep, the manipulation too extensive. But I supported my mother's decision to meet him once in a public place with support present. She needed closure more than any of us. She returned from that meeting shaken but resolute. He'd apologized, but still blamed others for his actions. He couldn't understand why the family had turned against him. The therapy had only given him new vocabulary for the same old patterns. That meeting freed her completely. She finally saw him clearly, without the fog of fear or obligation. She told him she forgave him for her own peace, but would never allow him back in her life. It was the final break she needed. Our family continued to heal and grow. New babies were born into a family free of conditional love. Children grew up expressing themselves without fear. We'd broken the cycle that had trapped us for generations. My mother became a grandmother figure to all the kids, not just her biological grandchildren. She was the safe adult they could talk to, the one who understood breaking free from toxic patterns. Her experience became a gift to the next generation. 3 years later, I sat in her living room, looking at photos from recent family gatherings. The transformation was complete. We were a family bound by choice and genuine affection, not obligation and fear. It had been a long journey, but we'd made it. She looked at me with tears in her eyes and apologized again for the lost years. I told her what I'd learned in my own therapy. We can't change the past, but we can choose our future. And our future was bright, built on honesty, respect, and unconditional love. The story could have ended differently. We could have remained fractured, controlled by one man's need for power. Instead, we chose healing. We chose each other. And in the end, that choice made all the difference.